Well, hello, and a very good morning, a very good afternoon, and a very good evening based on the time in which you'll be watching this video. I again hope that every one of you is doing well and fine, along with everyone in your family. Now, moving on to history. The first question that comes into everyone's mind is that why do we require or why do we need to study history? And most of us are puzzled when we open the history book, asking us and asking ourselves and also asking our elders, why are we having to study this? Now, you must have, or every one of us must have at times watched or looked at old family albums and photographs. We find that there are so many people, our great grandfathers or great great grandfathers. We see so many people who, in the photographs, which or those people who we do not see in our everyday life as of now. And we keep on asking questions: what were they? Who were they? What did they do? Now, that is the same thing which we should that is the same thing which history makes us ask. It asks, or it makes us ask, what was a country, what was a culture, maybe 100 years ago, or maybe so many thousands of years ago. So what made this culture as what we are today is because of our ancestors and of our great grandfathers and of our forefathers. The same is true for history. What we are today, or what a country is today, what a society is today, is because of a result of so many different years of history. That is why we require to study history. We require to study history so as to know about the problems which are facing us today. Why did so many problems come? Why do we, or what are the ways by which we can tackle them, or what are the ways by which we can understand those problems? Those are the answers which we find in history. History is the study of changing patterns in society, how the society has changed over the years, what are the patterns, or what are the ways, or what are the things which made these changes possible. That is why we study history. Now, history has three, or we have historians have divided history into three distinct phases. That is the ancient phase, the medieval phase, and the modern phase. These or There was difference in society, economy, culture, and politics of one period from the other. That is why there are three distinct phases. Not only in the world, in India also we have three different phases. The ancient phase, the ancient phase starting from the Harappan era or the Aryan age and going on till the Gupta age. Then comes the medieval age. There was a distinct change in the society after the Turkish invasions, which you have studied in Standard 7. After the Turkish invasions and the advent of Islam in India, there was a change in culture, a very wide and a very distinct change in the culture, in the society, and in the economic patterns of the country. That is why the phase after the Turkish invasion happens to be the medieval phase or the middle phase. And after that, there were the Mughals. After the fall of the Mughals and after the coming of the Britishers and after the British rule started in India, the modern phase in India started. It is so called because the Britishers, when they came to India, they brought in many modern ways of thinking, modern industries, modern transportation systems, modern communication systems. That is why it is called the modern phase of Indian history. Now, a same country or India, or the division of India into ancient, medieval, and modern may not be same for, or the year in which the modern phase started in India may not be same for any other country or some other continent. As in Europe, we can say that the modern phase started with the time or during the Industrial Revolution or during the Renaissance movement, which happened during the 16th century. So, different countries, different places have different time according to which they had their different periods: the ancient period, the medieval period, and the modern period. The medieval period is the middle period. That is the period of transition, moving from the ancient times to the modern times. So there are, or we have to study all these distinct phases or distinct periods of history so as to know what changes, or how the changes came, what were the driving forces behind these changes. That is why history is to be studied. Now, what are the sources of history? Or before we go on to the sources, what are the features of the modern age? Why do we call this age the modern age? The features, some of the distinct features which are found in the modern age, which were not found or which were not there in the medieval or in the ancient age were: the first one is industrialization. Industrialization is nothing but the wide scale or the mass scale starting up of or setting up of industries so as to produce goods, or moving from the handmade goods to the machine made goods. That is industrialization. Next comes the urbanization. Along with industrialization started urbanization. As you studied in geography, urbanization is the moving of the or the setting up of cities, or moving of people, migration of people from the rural areas to the urban areas so as to form different cities. And this is urbanization. This was also a part of industrialization, or a result or impact of industrialization. So this is also a very distinct feature of the modern age. Next, we have scientific progress. Scientific progress, the way science has progressed in the modern age. As you can see, the different means and modes of communication, telecommunication, which are there in our age, was not there or was not even thought of during the medieval ages. So this scientific and progress is also a very important feature of the modern age. Next, we have growth of democratic institutions. During the ancient and the medieval eras, or during the ancient and the medieval period of history, more or less we had the kingly or the monarchical system, and the hereditary system of government, in which the king's son would become the king and the generation next would become the king, and that went on for so many different generations. So this was what was prevalent during the ancient and the medieval eras or the medieval periods. But during the modern age, democracy, or government of the people, by the people, and for the people, is one of the most important feature or aspect of the modern age. Then we have rationalism. Rationalism, previous what do we or rationalism is a very important concept or feature which started with Europe and with the Renaissance movement in Europe. Rationalism is nothing but questioning everything, or questioning the reason behind everything which is happening around us, instead of just believing that it is an act of God. Previously, during the medieval or in the ancient times, everything was attributed to the act of God, or everything that was happening around us or to us, or was happening to any country, that all of that was blamed upon God and also different religious institutions. But after the Renaissance movement in Europe, people started questioning, and people started looking at everything with the light of reason. They started reasoning everything. So this is a very important feature of the modern age, rationalism. Lastly comes the humanism. Humanism is nothing but putting humans in the center stage and not religion in the center stage of our activities. That is, during the medieval times and in the ancient times, whatever human beings were doing, or whatever was being done by different countries or different societies, it was so as to please the religions, or with the religious point, or with religion as the point of view. But after the Renaissance movement, and after the rationalism movement in Europe happened, this humanism, or putting humans or the needs of the humans and the different aspirations and expectations of the humans in the middle, or in the center stage of all the economic and also of all the social activities happening in the society. So this is also one of the very important feature of the modern age. Now, when we read history, history is not something which is happening in front of us. History had happened so many years ago, so many thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago. So how do we understand, how do we know about history? So as to study history, we need sources. What are the sources? There are two kinds of sources which are available to us. First is the primary source, and then comes the secondary source. What are the primary sources? Primary sources include original documents such as letters, government reports, autobiographies, newsreels, newspapers, speeches, audio recordings, video recordings, photographs, sculptures, paintings, and archaeological remains such as monuments and artifacts. What it actually means is that primary sources are those sources which we find, or primary sources are those sources which we have got from those times, or from the historical times. If we go to the Qutub Minar, that is the primary source of telling us about the medieval age of India. The Qutub Minar is telling us the monument of the Qutub Minar, everything that is written, the inscriptions on the Qutub Minar. Those things tell us about the happenings of those times of India. If we go to the Taj Mahal, if we go to the other temples in India, if we go to the Lingaraj temple, suppose in Bhubaneswar, or we are going to the Mahabaleshwar temple, or we are visiting some other places, we are looking at the Mauryan inscriptions. So these things, and also if we are looking at the coins during the, or which were issued by so many different emperors and kings, if we are looking at the seals of the Harappan ages, these are the primary sources, or these are the sources, or these are the things which have been handed down to us from those times or from the historical times. We can directly read them, refer to them, and also try to understand them so as to understand how the society worked or how was India of those times. These are the primary sources. Also, we can find primary sources if we are talking of, suppose, the 1900s. Then we'll find the newspaper cuttings, the newspaper clips, newspapers, books written by the people of those times, autobiographies of those people living in those times, paintings which tell us about the different social customs prevalent during those times. So these are the primary sources. Suppose someone or the drawing teacher asks any one of you so as to draw the modern day classroom, or the modern day classroom where the children are eating tiffin. So what is, or what kind of a painting will it be? It will be showing children with different colorful pencil boxes, colorful bags, colorful tiffins, people eating, or the students eating Maggie, the classroom having smart board. So when a person will be looking at this photograph or looking at this painting of the classroom, maybe suppose 100 or thousands of years later, they'll be understanding that, okay, so people during those times, people during 2020 used to eat Maggie in their school, or used to eat chowmin in the school, or used to eat dhokla in the school maybe. And also they had smart boards like these, they used to sit in desks, they used to have wooden benches. So these are the things which a person may be looking at this painting so many hundreds of years later will be understanding about our times, of how we used to have a classroom in 2020. So when we look at paintings of so many thousands of years ago, we will be understanding, or we understand how those people used to live, what society they used to have, what kind of culture they had. So that is the importance of paintings, that is the importance of so many different artifacts, so many different coins, architectural inscriptions, video recordings, audio recordings, photographs, speeches, newspapers. So these are the primary sources. And what are the secondary sources? Now, there are people who are the historians, they study the primary sources. They understand the primary sources, they write about the primary sources, they research about these primary sources, they tell us about these primary sources. The historians, archaeologists, they are the ones who bring